Love seeing community together. And this month, I'm drawing my inspiration from community for our creative spirit gatherings. When I think on, all that everyone has been adjusting to over the last several months, I think one of the hardest adjustments for many of us is our community adjustments and how we're interacting with community in our lives. It creates this time of global transformation at that level of community and how we are interacting with other people, which when we think on what that means to us, to all of a sudden be separated from our regular way of being with people one-on-one and in community, it becomes so clear how important community is to us. So today we're going to be talking about community and community inspirations. What inspires us? What inspires our hearts? What inspires our spirit? What inspires our creativity? So as we prepare to be inspired, we'll take a moment and just settle into that with a moment of prayer. We open our hearts with gratitude for this moment, right here, right now, for this opportunity to come together in community, for this opportunity to be love and expression, for this opportunity to remember all the ways that we are connected to one another and to our source, to the one Spirit. For this opportunity, we say, thank you, God, and so it is. Amen. So what inspires you? Who inspires you? There's so many aspects of our community life, right? Where whether it's a church or spiritual center or Unity Arts Ministry, there are different ways that we receive inspiration. This morning, I was inspired by my own garden and thinking about all of the different ways, even in like a nature environment. I was sitting outside and journaling and I could hear just one bird at first, I was only aware of one. And I could hear it, kind of doing its cheep, 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 cheep. And that was like the only sound I heard as I was journaling. And then I took a moment to like really notice. I was just like, what other sounds do I hear? And the moment I did that, I put my attention on what other sounds, what other senses even were coming into play. I heard the crickets and I could hear like kind of two pockets, one on either side of me that were chirping. And so then it became the cheep, cheep, cheep and the chirp, chirp, chirp of the crickets. And then I became aware of other birds off in the distance. Then I became aware of cars driving even further out in the distance, this kind of like faint whoosh, as they went by. So I became aware of these sounds and I started thinking, these are all different aspects of community, the birds in community, the crickets in community, the people going to work or wherever they're going in the morning. And it all was being sort of filtered through me as the witness in that moment to just presence all the different aspects that I was hearing. And then the wind would come by and I noticed, my plants responding to that, the sound of that. And so every little aspect of community, whether we're aware of it or not, can play a big role in our lives. It can inspire us. Just that moment, I was thinking, what if I turned this into a poem? Or what if I got out my art journal and I started coloring, what I was experiencing in that moment, color the garden while taking in all of these senses. So every aspect of our community, whether we're at home or we're out in the world, we are still impacted and have the ability to be inspired, uplifted by all that's going on in all these different pockets of community in our lives. So if you want to share in the comments or in the chat, what aspects of community really inspire you? What pockets can you think of? Is there a group or even an individual that's coming to mind? It's like, right now I'm really inspired by what I'm seeing happening with this group or person. Or if you want to jot it down in your own journal to take notice, where are you being inspired by community? I recently, I saw somebody on Facebook shared a post of painting in her neighbor's backyard. And I was inspired. I'm like, oh yeah, like a paint party, even in the backyard. I could do that. We could do that. We could get people together. Yeah, Facebook groups, art groups, online art tutorials that inspire and give us ideas. So today's focus being on community. I wanted to look at community in terms of all the diversity that's available to us in our communities. And I think of, one of my own gardening experience. Yeah, I'm seeing comments, creative groups on Facebook, this group in the morning for sure, right? We all inspire each other. That's why I love having the Zoom room option so that we can really inspire each other and draw from each other. So when I think on community, I've really been thinking about it in terms of like this life garden, all these different aspects and different elements that each bring beauty and each could inspire me as I look at them and witness them and see the beauty that's there. This is such a simple, I say simple, it was simple to execute. It looks really pretty and detailed now, but it was sort of like just a very playful journal page that I did. And I did this using Sharpie markers as outline and paint markers to fill it in. You could, of course, use any type of drawing materials if you wanted to do this type of creating a community garden. So maybe one type of flower or type of plant represents a certain community aspect in your life. And here's all the different people that make up this one community. Or the petals represent people. And when we think of community like a garden, we can think of not only the beauty and the diversity that's in that, but also the fact that the garden, every single one of those plants has its roots in the soil. Every one of those plants is receiving nourishment from the same ground. And so when we think on our communities in terms of our spiritual life, we can look at it as our communities are all still rooted and grounded in spirit. They're all nourished by source just as we are. And so as we nurture and nourish the source of our being in peace and love, then we can also see how our communities are nourished in the same way. And in that way, when we feel disconnected in our current situation, when we feel a little bit of, I'm not experiencing community the same way, we can be reminded that our roots are all still united in the same source. And in that, we are still connected, even if we're feeling a disconnect. There's still that way that we can be connected with them. I was recently flipping through Adventures on the Quest, which is sort of the companion book to the book The Quest, which is by Richard and Mary Alice. I always say Hafoya because I'm used to when I lived in San Diego, right, you would pronounce the J as a huh sound, but everybody out here in the Midwest calls them the Jophalas. So I don't know how they pronounced it. They lived here for a while, so maybe they went with that. But I'm going to openly admit to not knowing how to pronounce that properly. But this provides kind of the summary of each of the chapters and a little bit of inspiration. And what I really liked was in their chapter on relationships, they say this: relationships are more than emotion to emotion contacts. It's too superficial. Trying to understand a relationship or affect a change in that relationship from sort of a psychological, a logic base level alone is like trying to care for wildflowers by identifying each individual flower and giving separate attention to each petal and stem. Can you picture that, going out to a wildflower garden and like just, I don't know, like picture almost like dusting the petals or something. It's like you're just looking at what's visible at the surface and trying to care for that. Anyone who has a garden and you're out there like picking the bugs off or, checking under the leaves and looking for anything, that would be the caring for the wildflowers in that sense, looking at the individual pieces. A relationship at its worst is seeing the differences in each other, but at its best, it's a touching of souls, a seeing of the Christ, the spirit essence in each other. Rather than treating stems and petals, treating a relationship on a Christ-to-Christ basis is like watering the roots of the wildflowers. It's like watering the roots of the wildflowers. I love that image of watering the roots, so that as we reflect on the communities that inspire us and all the ways that we are connected in community, when we think of watering the roots, we do that in our prayer, in our meditation, and in our journals. We remember that essence, the essence that connects us, and nurture that relationship. And in that way, even in our distance, we are still connected. So today I'm going to invite you to create in your journal something that represents for you a reflection of the communities that inspire you. It could be a wildflower garden. It could be a continuation of the tree image that we did last week. You might want to just pick images from a magazine that remind you of your connections and community and the many ways that you're inspired. So let it be your own practice, your own process, and see what emerges for you on the page. As we take that now into a time of meditation, to presence, what's arising for us in our own hearts. So wherever you are, I invite you to relax. Relax in the moment, relax in your seat. Breathe in, exhale. If you notice any tension in your body, you might want to wiggle it out, move your shoulders around. And take another cleansing breath in and exhale. Relaxing here and now. If it's comfortable for you, you might want to close your outer eyes and let all of your senses simply move within. Rather than focusing on the external world, bring your awareness down to your heart center, from your head to your heart. Maybe place your hands on your heart. And bring the love of community into this space. Again, without logic, without discernment of which ones are weeds, which ones are more beautiful. Simply bringing all aspects of community into your heart and letting them rest there in divine love. watering the roots, breathing in, breathing out. And we'll simply rest for a moment of silence. Rest in divine love. And on the next breath, we begin to bring our awareness back to this moment in time. And we take this love with us, this honoring of diversity and community, this honoring of all the ways that we are uplifted and inspired by the different aspects of community in our life. And as we open our eyes, we allow ourselves to take this meditation onto the page, moving into our journal processing experience. We simply allow ourselves to reflect on the page. For those of you joining us online, we invite you to share your artwork with us in our art group, Unity Arts Community. And if you've been inspired by this morning's experience, we invite you to consider donating at unityartsministry.org. Thank you for joining us.